Good afternoon and welcome to Anticipating the Unexpected, Involving Your Family in Financial Planning and Decision Making. My name is Tracy Hartford, and I have the pleasure of working with individuals and families on defining, discovering, and living out their freedom. I truly enjoy helping my families prepare for the future, and I'm thrilled to be here today to share some of those key things to consider. Before we get going, I want to share a few ground rules. First, we know time is precious, and we worked really hard to put together the content that will fall within our 30-minute time frame. Therefore, to keep us on schedule, if you have questions, please type them into the chat box on your screen. We'll do our best to address them during or at the end of our webinar, and then we'll also do a follow-up email with the recording and the attachments as well. Now to introduce our guest speaker for today, Karen Drancic. Karen is a Senior Vice President with Neuberger Berman, a private independent employee-owned investment manager. Karen has been in the business for over 35 years and specializes in planning for the unforeseen, what she calls go plans. As she shared with me the other day, if you own something and or love someone, you have to prepare. Please join me in welcoming Karen to our webinar today.
Thank you, Tracy, and good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're having a good week and looking forward to the holiday this weekend. What we're going to talk about is a subject matter that most families tend to put off. Let's face it, nobody wants to think about getting sick or having somebody pass away in their families. But it's my opinion that if you plan for this before anything happens, then the stress levels go way down, and people are empowered by the knowledge that you give them ahead of time. And before I get started, I mean, since this is, I always like to call this a Debbie Downer of a subject matter because you're talking about incapacity and death here, but I have a couple of stories that I have encountered with clients recently over the last couple of years that I want to share. One of them is a little lighthearted, and the other one is a little bit more pointed towards what we're going to be talking about here. So I'll start with the humorous one. I worked with a financial advisor in College Station, Texas, about a year and a half ago. And I was with a group of women, and I asked all of them at the end of my presentation if anyone had ever had a mom or a grandmother who had hid her jewelry or her valuables. My mother used to hide her silver every time they went on vacation. And this one woman raised her hand and she was chuckling. She said, well, she said it wasn't exactly valuables, but she said the story is my dad was a rancher, and every time he sold a head of cattle, he would take cash for payment only, and he would bring the stack of bills to my mother in the kitchen, and she would wrap them up in butcher paper, tie them up with twine, and mark them up and stick them in the deep freezer in the basement where they stored all of their frozen meat. And I said, well, that's actually not too bad because you knew where stuff was. She goes, oh no, we didn't know what it was. She said, I'm like, well, how did you know if anything ever happened to your mom or dad, what to go get out of the freezer? And she said, well, my mother figured nobody would ever go in there looking for liver. So she marked all of the beef, or excuse me, she marked all of the money liver. And when this gal's mom passed away, she said she raided the family freezer and she found tens of thousands of dollars in the family freezer. Now, I consider that a win because the family actually communicated that information ahead of time. Now, my second favorite story is, again, from Texas. I met a young lady at an event, and after I had finished speaking, she invited me over to meet her mom and her 100-year-old grandmother. And upon meeting mom and 100-year-old grandmother, I sat down and they said, well, we have a confession to make. We brought you here with an ulterior motive. And I said, really, what's going on? She said, well, we have a story that we want to tell you that we hope that you will take on the road with you, so to speak. And I said, sure, what's the story? She said, well, I lost my dad 3 years ago. She said it was not an unexpected death. He'd been sick for a number of years. But as the family was gathering around him and he was slowly but surely making his exit, She said, one afternoon, she said, totally out of the blue, my father became very alert, and he looked up at the daughter and he said, honey, don't forget about the $50,000. And she looked at him and she said, what $50,000, Dad? And he said, you know, the $50,000 in cash. At which point she got very concerned. She looked at him and she said, Daddy, I have no earthly idea what you're talking about. Where is it? And he said, I know you'll find it. And he died right there. Last words on earth were, I know you'll find it. Well, I looked at her after she finished her story and I was like, wow. I said, that's horrible. I said, number one, I'm sorry for your loss. But number two, and at the risk of sounding insensitive here, I said, I think there's a little bit more to the story. Did you find the money? And she said, yes, we did. And I said, well, how long did it take you to find it? She said 6 months. Can you imagine that? And I said, well, where was it? She said, well, that's the good part of the story. She said, my father, 3 years before he passed away, actually started telling everybody, you know what? My health is going downhill. He goes, I own 3 rental properties and I am not going to be renewing those leases over the next few years because at the time of my death, I want you to sell these properties and then split the proceeds between you and your siblings. And she was like, okay. So after her father passed away, as executor, she was cleaning out all 3 of the homes. And as she was cleaning out the 3rd property, underneath the sink in the master bathroom, she found a generic white plastic grocery bag stuffed with $100 bills to the tune of $50,000. Now, in my mind, she was very lucky to find it because that money was just about to go to whoever bought the house next. Consider it a really nice housewarming gift, if you will. But the one thing that prevented that from happening was, even though it was just under the wire, her father actually communicated that information in time for her at least to be able to go and look for it. So what we're going to be talking about today is, how do you put together a file or a drawer full of information that your loved ones are going to need at the time of your death? So we're going to start off with a few statistics, kind of understanding where the state of the American family is and some family dynamics that you're going to need. And then we're going to talk about understanding and knowing everything that your loved ones are going to need to know in the event of an illness or in the event of your death. Then I'm going to walk you through a piece that's going to help you keep your financial advisor up to date on what's going on in your life. And then we're going to talk about the professional team that you can put together that will help your family now and help your family in the future. So family dynamics. Just a couple of things, and these are some random statistics that I think are going to affect a lot of families. The first one is, I always apologize to the men here because this is not overly good news to them, but this is just kind of the way that it is. On the average, women can expect to live 22 years beyond retiring at the age of 65, meaning that they're probably going to live probably to their late 80s and early 90s. 70% of baby boomer generation, and I am actually one of those, I turned 65 this past year, 70% of us will actually outlive our husbands because their life expectancies are somewhere in the high 70s and low 80s. Women are more likely to be single in their golden years. Gray divorces are becoming a very big thing. 1 in 4 divorces are among people over the age of 50, and the average age of being widowed in this country is actually 59 years old, which was a shocking number to me. It seems so impossibly low. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is that in most households, it's usually one person who kind of takes the driver's seat in the family's finances. In a lot of cases, especially the baby boom generation, it may have been the husband. I think that is slowly but surely changing. But the point is, one of you probably does it and the other one is probably not so involved. This is your wake-up call for everyone to get on the same page so that everybody is understanding. But right now, 8 in 10 women will be the ones who will be left holding the family finances under their control. And yet, only 1 in 3 women actually claim responsibility for doing that right now. So we're kind of hoping to get everybody on the same page and knowing everything that's going on in the household, and not just about your investments, but also about family expenses, your insurance situation, etc. Now, the piece that you're seeing on the screen right now is one of the handouts that will be coming to you electronically after we're finished today. And it is called Anticipating the Unexpected. This is the tool that you're going to use. It's not a fill in the blank booklet, but it's more of a checklist that will help you gather a lot of information, a lot of documents and records, and put them in one specific place in your home, preferably somewhere that is fireproof and floodproof, so that when the time comes, your loved ones will know where to go to get this information. In creating this, I want you to encourage your spouse to participate. And if you have adult children, because I have no idea the age ranges of people on this call, if you have adult children, you may want to include them in this process as well. Because essentially what you are doing is creating a family roadmap on identifying the things that people are going to need to find and then telling them where to find it. Now, the things that you are going to be putting together, if you will, contact information specifically for family members, so immediate family, extended family. If you are still working, you're going to want to include the name of the person that you report to at your place of employment, and if possible, get a direct link to your HR department, especially the part that manages employee benefits. If there is life insurance there, your loved ones are going to want to know how to get a hold of the person at your employer. The other contact information, and I call these the big 3 or 4, your financial advisor's name, the title of their firm, and their phone number and or email address. Same for an estate planning attorney or a business attorney if you happen to own your own business. Their name, their firm name, and their contact information. If you have a tax professional that you work with, their contact information, and if you have a separate insurance agent from your financial advisor, again, the name of the firm and the name of the person that you work with and their contact information there. Those are really the first key pieces of information. One of the things that I will also tell you here is if you keep all this information stored on your phone, most of us keep a contact list on our iPhone or an Android device. You're going to want to make sure that somebody also knows the 4-digit or 6-digit code that will unlock your phone to be able to get this information off of your telephone or off of the cloud, so to speak. So this is one of the things that I also encourage people to do ahead of time is give away that 4-digit or 6-digit code so people can get into your phone. After my mom passed away, I ended up using her phone for quite a bit of information until I ended up settling her estate. So learn from my experience. Now, the other documentation that you're going to be gathering immediately. Your estate planning information is one of the first things that your loved ones are going to get, especially in the event of your death. It's your will, any trust that you might have created, whether they are living or whether they are testamentary in nature, titles and deeds to property. So if you own your home, the title to your home, if you own raw land, if you own commercial or rental property, and these are things that are owned free and clear of any debt, your loved ones are going to need to know where the titles to those are. And we're going to talk about where to put this stuff in a minute. Also, previous year's tax returns. The IRS says that you need to keep 7 years of these on file somewhere. whether it's electronically or whether it's a paper form. So let your loved ones know if you have a TurboTax file on your computer, make sure they know how to get into that, or if you have paper ones stored, where those are located. FYI, tax returns can become very important investigative tools in the event that your loved ones can't find assets after you die. So that's why you want to keep those. Other things, and this is in no particular order, all the documents related to your marriage. So marriage certificate, divorce decrees, prenuptial agreements, postnuptial agreements, birth certificates for you, your spouse, and your children. If you've been in the military, your honorable discharge papers, DD-214s, where are those? Your loved ones will potentially need those if you are to be buried in a military cemetery. Insurance policies, this is a big one. There is no database that your loved ones can go to find out if you had a life insurance policy. So the burden of proof is going to be on you to let them know that you do have one. So make sure they know where to find those contracts and how many they are looking for. My mother passed away. I was under the impression, because she'd called me a year before and told me she'd cashed out her life insurance to go take a trip with a friend. And yet 3 months after she died, I was digging through her checking account looking for something else, and I found a very large debit from a life insurance company. So I picked up the phone and I called them, identified myself as the executor, and they came back and they told me, yes, your mother has a $100,000 life insurance policy here that I think she totally forgot about. So I found that money by serendipity, by looking for something else. You don't want your family members to have to get lucky to find those. Then it's all of your liquid or your financial asset paperwork. Your checking account, your savings accounts, your investment accounts, CDs, 401k plans, IRAs, annuities. Your loved ones are going to want to know how many accounts you have of each particular variety and where those accounts are located. And then where can they find the statements for all of those particular accounts? They usually come monthly, quarterly, or annually. Let's face it, every firm is trying to get you to take those statements electronically. So if you get them electronically, they're going to need the username and password to get into each account. So make sure you leave that behind. That's where the passwords thing comes into play. It's not just the passwords to your devices, but also the passwords to all of your individual accounts. Like I mentioned, checking, savings, investment accounts, etc. Now, the other thing they're going to end up needing passwords for potentially are if you pay your monthly expenses electronically. Most of us do a lot of that. They're either paid directly by auto debit from a checking account. Your loved ones are going to want to know that. And then if you pay things online by going in and paying them once a month, then your loved ones are going to need the usernames and passwords to get into those accounts to be able to pay them. And that's for final payment, or in the event that you become incapacitated, your loved ones are going to want to know how to keep those payments ongoing. So that's why all of this information is going to go into this emergency file that you're creating. Now, all of the information should be kept up to date, but the big things that really need to be kept up to date annually, and this means you're going to take a look at them annually, are all of your assets, any debts that you might have, specifically debts because a lot of times we end up paying them off, your insurance information. Please promise me, the one thing that you're going to do is check the beneficiary designation page on those contracts at least once a year, because people come and go out of our lives and you want to keep those policies current and up to date and keep the beneficiaries current and up to date. And then your legal documentation, I would take a look at it once a year, but attorneys will tell you that that documentation should be reviewed and revised with them every 3 to 5 years. So I would take kind of the approach of a set it and forget it, so that you know you're going to do this all at the same time. And the one thing that I know that we all do pretty much at the same time every year is pay our taxes. If you are an April the 15th filer, then you probably just got done doing that. So I would make your time to update this information every year when you do your taxes. Okay, this is just a little overview of understanding the what you have part. Assets, like I mentioned, are things like stocks and bonds and cash, your real estate, any annuities that you might have, your qualified plans, so your 401k plan maybe at your place of employment, or if you have some that you've already rolled over from previous employers, or if you are retired, then it would be your IRA. And if you have a pension, if you're lucky enough to still have a pension like I do, don't forget to share that information with your loved ones. Debts are any money that you owe anyone, specifically the formalized one. A mortgage, particularly for house or property, personal loans to other people that you may have borrowed from. The other thing is, if you have loaned money, your loved ones are going to want to know where to go to get that back. Lines of credit, like a home equity loan or a home equity line of credit, and then your credit cards. And this is your reminder to check your credit score once a year also. Then your insurance information is not just life insurance, but you're going to want to keep on hand who your health insurance provider is. If you have disability insurance, because that can be really important in the event that someone can't work, temporarily or permanently. And then long-term care. If you have that, I can guarantee you your children and your spouses are doing the happy dance. Just make sure they know where to find the policies. And I already mentioned here, your legal documentations are wills, trusts, your durable power of attorney, which I think happens to be one of the most important documents that you are going to get from an estate planning attorney, because in the event that you become mentally incapacitated, that document will allow someone to come in and take care of you with your own money, with your own stuff at their discretion. If you do not have that done ahead of becoming incapacitated, you will be subject to something called a guardianship proceeding, and they are ugly. It means that someone will be appointed a guardian for you by the court, and it may not be somebody that you would want, but the court will appoint someone, and they will have to go to court every time they want to pay bills or take care of you with your own money. So it is time consuming, it is messy, and it's expensive. So avoid it by getting that little $250 durable power of attorney and update that every 5 to 7 years. The other legal documents are going to be, like I mentioned before, the documents related to your marriage, documents related to any business that you might own. This is just kind of a running checklist of making sure that you know where all these documents are so you can tell your loved ones where they are. Now, the other piece that you are going to be getting is something called a surviving spouse checklist. And it's a bit of a misnomer because it's not just for a surviving spouse. This is something that you can also provide ahead of time to whomever you have named as executor or personal representative for your estate. This person, at the time of your death, will have to notify the court, especially if you have to go to probate, that you have been named executor. The probate court will accept you as executor and then send you on your merry way to settling the estate. They don't give you any guidance on what to do. I will tell you, I've been through that process, and they're not overly helpful. So we at Neuberger created this piece to help that person, and this is going to tell them exactly what are the things that they're going to need to be doing, what are the duties that they are going to have to perform. We're going to tell them when they're going to have to perform those duties. So it's set up on a timeline. It's a little bit like a project management scorecard, if you will. And then we're going to tell them what are the documents and records that they're going to need to get those duties accomplished. Now, hopefully all of those documents and records will be in that emergency file that you will have created with the Anticipating the Unexpected brochure. So it's set up on the timeline from the first week after somebody passes away all the way through the filing of the federal estate tax return, which is the Form 706, which is due within 9 months to a year of someone's passing away. This is one of our most requested pieces of information. I think everybody knows someone who has lost a loved one. Since it's coming to you electronically, please feel free to share that. Now, you're right, like I mentioned, you're going to have to update a lot of information, but there are some things that happen to us that don't necessarily involve paperwork, if you will. And these are some of the things that you would need to notify your financial advisor, your tax professional, or your attorney about if any of these events particularly happen to you within a given year. You are going to be getting the checklist that you see here, but this is a listing of ordinary everyday life events that happen to people that have either legal or financial ramifications. So much so that we think that your financial advisor and your attorneys are going to want to know about these. They're broken down into categories: household formation events. Think of it in terms of any time somebody comes and goes from your family. People getting married, people having babies, people getting divorced, your children leaving the house after they graduate from college, perhaps. Having an adult child divorce or separate, that's information that an attorney would want to know. And then just becoming a grandparent. A lot of people want to provide for the next generation as well. So that's household formation events. Inheritance events are pretty straightforward. Anytime you inherit money, whether it's in terms of cash or what I call assets in kind, like stocks or bonds, or if you inherit IRAs, or if you get payouts from a life insurance policy. Career event, again, anytime you get a new job, lose a job, start a business, or wind down a business. Retirement events, the same thing. When you retire, it's not just notifying everybody, but a lot of people think ahead of time about what they want to do in retirement, and oftentimes it involves selling a house, potentially maybe downsizing, or moving out of state. A lot of people want to go somewhere warmer. I live in Chicago. A lot of people here want to go to Florida. And then if you do that, either you purchase an additional property or you sell the one that you have to buy a new house somewhere else. These are things your financial advisor will need to know about. And then health and dependency events. There are a lot of people right now who are living in what we call the sandwich generation, meaning that at the same time you're taking care of your spouse and your own children under your roof, you may be doing the same thing, taking care of your own parents. So this might be anytime you have an adult child that moves back in with you, or having a parent move in, or you becoming the caregiver for a disabled child or a disabled parent. With the advent, or I should say, the prevalence now of dementia, this is going to be happening more and more often. So please let your financial advisor know if you are having to step into that role. You will be getting this as well. And then, like I mentioned, you're going to be creating your own team of people that you're going to be working with to take care of all these things. Your first and foremost would be your financial advisor. 12 points. Thank you very much for including your clients in this conversation. Clients, I would expect you to make a phone call to your financial advisor so that you can start having these conversations sooner rather than later. Your tax professional is another key component of the professional team that you put together, especially if this is the person that helps you with your taxes, but it could also be a person that helps you with your business. So don't forget both of those varieties of tax professionals. Estate planning attorney is particularly going to be important as we start to approach our mortality, but don't wait too long. I know a lot of young people these days who are, in their 30s starting to have children. And fortunately, the ones that I know are already going to the attorneys and having their wills and trusts drawn up. And then other key professionals might be if you have a personal banker. I hope this doesn't happen to you, but some people have a divorce attorney on speed dial. And then, like I mentioned before, an insurance specialist that you work with outside of your financial advisor. Usually those involve things like disability, long-term care, and life insurance. So this is the team that you're going to be putting together. If you get business cards from each of the people that you work with on your team and include them in that emergency file, that's a really nice shortcut for everybody to get to that person. Now, I think that puts me right at 30 minutes, trying to honor your time here, but I'm going to open it up and see if anybody has any questions. Like Tracy said, you can include those in the feature on, I think, Tracy, you want to tell everybody?
Yeah, there's a questions box that you can put in there. I know one of the questions that did come up was about if there'll be a recording in the slide deck. We don't share the slide deck, but the recording of this session will be shared after this meeting. You will get that via email along with the attachments that Karen has shared, those different checklists. We will make sure that you get those. And if for some reason you missed the email, it will also be on the 12 Points website under resources in the webinars that we post up there as well. But I'll give people just another minute just in case there's any questions. I'm also just going to change the screen real quick just to make sure we have our disclosures up here as well. And just want to put those up here. There we go. Any questions from anyone else at this point? Well, thank you all again for joining us. We will share this recording as we share, but any questions that come up, please feel free to reach out to either one of us or to anyone here at 12 Points. Thank you again and enjoy your afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Karen.